Hello and welcome back to Harry Shoots People. Today is quite a momentous day in my photography journey as we finally hit 100 rolls. Now it's certainly taken a long time and it's been a lot of lessons learned and a lot of money spent, but we're here now. And I thought, what better way to celebrate this than making a retrospective video and going back and looking at the 100 rolls that I've shot, seeing the mistakes I've made, the lessons I learned, and just how my photography's improved along the way. So for the next hour or so, sit back and relax, maybe grab a drink, as we cast our minds back to 4 years ago, to the summer before uni, when my sister bought me my first ever disposable camera, which kicked this whole thing off. So my first ever experience in shooting film came, like most people's did, with one of these little disposable cameras. Like I said before, my sister bought me it the summer before I went to uni, and it just captured some really special times. There was a trip to Scotland with my family, a trip to the Lake District with my friends, and starting uni, and also just those random moments in between. These photos have a lot of that like nostalgic feel to them that you get with a lot of disposable cameras. Obviously, like the quality's not great, and some of the compositions straight up just suck, but I look back on them very fondly because I had so much fun taking them, and that's what it's all about. I like that there's a nice mix of both people and landscapes on this camera, because I still like to do a kind of mix of both nowadays, as I feel like whenever I get a roll back from the lab and it's all one or all the other, I feel like it comes across as quite uninteresting to me. So it's nice, and also I wasn't shooting as much there because it was my first ever roll, so it spanned a load of time and I was really happy to get these results back. And the first roll was a great start, so I knew I had to go out and buy another. My second camera ended up being exactly the same as the first one, as I was a bit scared to try something new, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The second roll ended up coming up very similar to the first one. It was mostly just pictures of me and my flatmates at the very start of uni. They still have that nostalgic feel to them, and I think my favourite thing about disposables is that people like having their pictures taken with them, and people like taking pictures of you with them. The one gripe I did have with this roll was that it felt like I shot it too fast. A lot of the pictures were taken on like one night or 1 or 2 nights, and it didn't have that same like memories of summer feeling that I had achieved with the first roll. So I knew that going on from then, I did want to slow down a bit and capture like a length of time. But that was also because I was just excited to take pictures, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. After successfully shooting 2 rolls of disposables, I decided it was time to upgrade. So I went on Depop, bought a little point and shoot, and loaded in some Ultramax 400. So let's see how my first ever point and shoot roll came out. Yeah, so unfortunately, like every film photographer ever, I didn't really understand the severity of opening the back of the camera whilst the film was still loaded in it. And this, as you might be able to tell, led to me burning pretty much every single one of these photos. There are little slivers of these photos that survived. It's like half of a friend's face with a family photo with orange cast and then double exposed to boot. But I think I really learnt my lesson here. Definitely not my best roll. I would say it's definitely top 3 worst so far, but somehow also top 3 best technically. But I was just excited to be using a point and shoot, and pretty naively felt like more of a photographer. Anyway, after this roll, I took a step back and decided to shoot another disposable camera to sort of get my confidence back up again. So we'll see how that went. So roll number 4 with the box outside camera. So definitely not my most reassuring result, that's for sure. Still, even to this day, I'm not really sure what went wrong with this roll. Maybe it was just all underexposed, maybe the flash didn't fire. Maybe since it was outdoor, it was 100 speed and just something went wrong along the way. Maybe it was me, who knows? There are a handful of lights present in the photos that I can just about make out, but to be honest, that's the extent of it. That's all I could get out of this roll. So after 2 bad rolls, I knew the next one had to be good to keep me interested. So I loaded some film back into my point and shoot, and this time, when the back was closed, it stayed closed. And it worked. The film came out properly, the camera worked, and I had successfully shot my first roll in a point and shoot. I ended up preferring the landscapes from this roll. It was my first time using autofocus, so I was just getting used to it, and it was a bit difficult moving from fixed focus disposables. I do, however, really like this photo of Jack in the snow. I think it might be my favourite from this roll. Unfortunately, the end of the roll did get a little bit exposed to sunlight, but like I say, it was only a couple of rolls compared to the last entire roll. But I thought they ended up coming out quite cool, as it only sort of created this cast on some of the image, and I don't even mind this one of the caravan. I remember as well being a lot more conscious of my compositions, as using the point and shoot felt like a massive step up, and it was. It was a massive step up from using a disposable, and it felt like the images had a lot more to them and I should give them a greater respect when I was taking them. As you get that kind of step up in creative control going from a disposable to a point and shoot, I became a lot more aware of how my images would look, and I wanted to be a lot more proud of them. So I ended up taking a bit more time to compose my images and make sure it was something worthy of shooting it. And another benefit of stepping up from a disposable to a point and shoot was a greatly increased image quality, and I definitely noticed this. I also realised I haven't actually said what my point and shoot is. So it's this little Minolta Riva 35 AF that I got off Depop for about £30. It's pretty basic in terms of features. It has the eponymous autofocus and auto flash. Essentially, it's fully automatic. All you have to do is put the film in properly and shoot. At first, it feels really daunting putting your own film in, as there's so many little rules that you have to remember, but once you get the hang of it and you start getting these scans back, it makes it all worth it. So to prove it wasn't a fluke and I can shoot a roll of film, I decided to load another. I genuinely love this roll, and I'm still impressed with a lot of these photos to this day, especially since it was only about 4 months into shooting film at this point. There's a really nice mix of different kind of photos, and some of these I'd still consider some of my favourite photos to this day. I really like the atmosphere in this photo, these wind turbines, and it's shot through a train window which gives it this muddy look. I really love the way that the wind turbines just fade away into the background. Speaking of wind turbines, when I went back to visit Hull, me and Charlie visited a park and I took this picture of one, which I love. It's very clear and the colours just came out really nice. And then I asked Charlie to take a picture of him, which at the time I did really like, but looking back I would have composed it differently if I'd taken it now. But it was pretty bold of me at the time to ask to take a picture of someone else, and that felt like a big move. So I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad Charlie took part. After shooting the triple pack of Ultramax 400, I decided it was time to try something new, so I ended up going with Fujifilm's Superior Extra 400. This roll ended up serving as another snapshot of fun times with friends and cool scenes I happened across it. I also tried to recreate that windmill picture whilst on a train, but I caught my reflection in the train window and it kind of ruins it. I enjoyed shooting this roll, and whilst they aren't the best pictures in the world, I was still happy to take them. It is quite interesting to see what classified as worthy of taking a picture back then, as nowadays I wouldn't have taken this shot, but I did back then and I'm happy that I did it. I'm also pretty glad that my first try at trying a new film stock went well, as it's something I still love to do to this day, is to experiment with different film stocks and sort of just branch out into what's available. But seemingly that was enough experimentation for now, as the next roll I loaded was more Kodak Ultramax. And this roll contains one of my favourite pictures that I think I've ever taken. I was just walking home from work at the time and I stopped across this gas station, which looked pretty cool, so I took this. I'm not exactly sure what it is about this photo that makes me like it so much. It's by no means a perfect image. There's spots of underexposure in the shadows and scratches and dust on the picture, but I love the atmosphere that's created here. I love the clouds that are above that look gloomy with a slight pinkish hue. I like the fact that all the lights in the petrol station are blown out and it gives it this sort of like dream-like ambience. I know it's a bit cliche and very day one film photography to take pictures of petrol stations, but cliches are useful for beginners and it gives you a nice way to compare yourself to your idols, because obviously a lot of people in the scene take these kind of pictures, so it gives you a nice point of comparison. I shot most of this roll at a festival. And whilst I do like some of the pictures, it is just the same picture multiple times. Like, these are apparently 4 different pictures. Nice ways to film, Harry. This picture is probably the best from the day. I love the shadows around the edge that sort of lead your eye in with the guiding light in the middle. I mean, apart from this person's phone and this ice cream truck. But it was a nice lesson in composition. At this point, I was watching a lot of film photography YouTube, and I decided, since I made the big perilous jump from disposables to point and shoots, I was now somehow ready to jump from a point and shoot to an SLR. So I ordered myself a Praktica MTL5 and loaded it with, you'll never guess, Kodak Ultramax 400 and started shooting. And safe to say, I struggled a lot this time. Maybe I wasn't ready to be doing manual focus. When I had a little more time to make sure I had crucial focus, the photos didn't come out too badly. But I was in a rush to shoot the entire roll and get it developed to see if the camera was working, so I shot the entire thing in my house in pretty much a day. Honestly, I was very much not ready to be using an SLR. I didn't really understand what they could do, and all of the manual controls ended up being a bit daunting at the time. So if you're looking at getting an SLR early into photography career, don't stress out too much because you will learn everything just by using it. It just takes quite a while. I also managed to shoot a pretty much perfectly exposed flash photo, which I'm still surprised about to this day. So alongside trying out the SLR, I was also still putting rolls through my point and shoot. I was trying to get into the habit of carrying it with me every day and just sort of taking pictures of things that stood out to me. Some of them ended up coming out fairly nicely, and some of them ended up coming out like this. But everyone's been a victim of covering the lens with their finger at one point or another. For the most part, this role accompanied me on sort of nights out at the start of second year where I just wanted nice pictures of my friends, and it did okay for that purpose. I remember at the time really wanted to take nice pictures of my friends, but since I was new to photography and thought I was a lot better than I actually was, I didn't want to tell anyone I was taking a picture, which yeah, I guess made the image more real, but usable and nice? No. I do like this picture. It has some nice layers of both plant and brickwork to it. There is a small lens flare at the bottom and the highlights from the sun are blown out. But I'm a fan of the composition and I'm glad I took it as it was a slight departure from what the rest of the roll ended up looking like. Another roll and basically the exact same story, mostly just night out pictures. I promise these do actually get better soon. Although I do actually like some of these photos. After getting the last roll back, I did kind of actively try to make sure my subjects were a bit more aware that they were having their picture taken, and lo and behold, they resulted in better photos. Who could have guessed? Unfortunately, the Minolta Riva seemed to struggle a bit with the autofocus, especially when it was a bigger image. If there was a couple subjects at a couple different focal distances, it had a hard time choosing what to focus on. So a couple of them are out of focus. Here's a nice double exposure too, for good measure. And back to the Practica for middling results. I don't know why, but for some strange reason I just could not wrap my head around split prism focusing. I mean, it was a bit bold of me to go straight from autofocus to manual focus this early on, so maybe that explains it. These two pictures of a hanging butterfly aren't too bad. I think when I had a lot more time to just ensure that my focus was perfectly spot on, then it came out okay. And I also think I was shooting on 2.8 and didn't really understand how to change it. A lot of these images are out of focus, some by a little and some by a lot. And some are definitely worse than others. Getting these back was definitely off-putting, and it sort of signalled that I needed to put a bit more time and research into using the Practica. So I decided to dedicate my next role solely to making sure that I could use it properly. And this ended up being my first foray into black and white, something later down the line I would end up growing to love. But for now, I'd heard a lot about it and wanted to try it out, and since this was just going to be a practice roll, the cheaper alternative was chosen. Starting off the roll, this photo of my room is out of focus, but you can see that the aperture is set to a lot wider than in previous photos, so there's a little bit more leeway in the depth of field, and I think that shows you can kind of make out some of the image rather than it just being one big blur. I then took a couple of images of my bathroom, a la grainy days, and I'm pretty happy with them. There's a nice silence in these images, and the low contrast black and white works wonders here. Given that the focus and the exposure are pretty much spot on here, it showed me that slowing down and really taking my time is the best method, especially in the early days, as this kind of laid the groundwork for me to be able to do it faster later down the line. And since it was snowing, it was only right to go outside and take a couple pictures in the snow, which unfortunately I didn't quite nail. But there was a cool scene outside my house of a trolley covered in snow, so I took this. Which also didn't come out too great, but as I was trying to improve my skills, I thought back to taking those pictures of the bathroom earlier, slowed down, took my time, and I took this, which I'm a lot happier with. There's another example of this later in the roll where I missed the photo that I was trying to take twice, but I get it right on the third time, which definitely isn't the most cost-effective use of film, but as a beginner, I'm really glad that I took the time to make sure that I got those shots, and I'm glad I spent a roll just trying to develop and hone in my skills specifically. Since there's normally quite a long period between shooting the film and getting your scans back as well, so you can sort of misremember what you shot, I made notes the entire time of what settings I was using and what I was photographing, so I could compare them, which definitely helped me, and I'd recommend it to other beginners too. For some of these rolls, especially ones out of the point and shoot, they are just kind of pictures from day to day that I've taken on my camera, so I'll just let those play out for you. I took the Practica with me on a trip to Leeds and I snapped these pictures there, which I'm pretty happy with overall. I took some more pictures in my room and then I decided to take it on a walk with my friends into the peaks. However, unbeknownst to me, at this point, the battery in the camera had completely died, leading to the metering being completely off. So there was a lesson I'll never forget again. There definitely isn't a lot to say about this roll. Most of it was shot on my friend Becky's birthday and led to some pretty lacklustre photos. I did enjoy taking individual portrait shots, although there is still definitely room for improvement. However, the standout shots of this roll are these of a broken car. There's something about them which I just really like. The 3 different compositions are all fairly interesting and came out nicely, so these were one of my favourite photos for a long time after that. Also, if you needed a visual for what I looked like at the time, don't worry, I've done the honours for you and shot myself. So at this point, I was pretty confident in shooting film, or at least I thought I was at the time, and me and my friends were heading out to a Tom Aston show, so I thought I'd bring my point and shoot with me and shoot some pictures there. To be perfectly honest, I'm a very harsh critic, but some of these photos just straight up suck. And it definitely didn't help being quite far back just with my point and shoot too. I think you do kind of get into your head what your photos at gigs are going to be like, and you think they're going to be sick, and more often than not, they're not. However, there are some from the roll that I do actually in fact like. They're by no means masterpieces, and some of them have like a weird canted angle to them, which I wouldn't normally shoot now, but I quite enjoy them, and I like the sense of like atmosphere and energy that the images have to them. Also, just as an experience, I did enjoy shooting at this gig, and I'd love to do it properly one day, and maybe even to take pictures of Tom Aston one day too. Be a nice full circle moment. Roll 18 seemed like a massive step up in my photography. I ended up going back to home and taking quite a few pictures I actually enjoyed. There's not too much to say about this roll in particular, but seeing these kind of colours and tones made me fall in love with Kodak Gold, which is a film I shoot a lot more of to this day. So I'm glad I did end up using it for this roll, because I like how the images came out and that sort of ambience that they have. Roll 19 followed suit with some images that I'm pretty happy with. At this point I'd moved into my second year house and became a little bit obsessed with the light coming down from the ceiling. But I love these pictures, and the slightly more dramatised lighting than normal really catches my eye. The latter half of the roll ended up catching the latter half of the aforementioned walk as well. I love the colours and composition of this one. There's a slight nice daydream feeling to it, which I do quite like. And there's also this photo of my friend Charlie, which I really like too. So back to the Practica, and shall we see if we actually managed to take a decent picture on it yet? The results are still no. However, there are still improvements. Compositionally, they're getting better, although I'm still failing on the manual controls. Either exposure or focus are normally just completely out, and sometimes it's a lovely combination of both. I'm a big fan of this photo of the water dripping off the rock. Definitely my favourite from the roll and probably from the Practica so far. After the walk, I was taking some pictures of Chile and I took this one, which I do like, although it does have some glaring issues, but since it was the best of a bad bunch, I had to take what I could get. I took my point and shoot with me to go see Young Lean, which led to a lot better results than with Tom Austin. Again, being in the crowd has its negatives, but I'm still a fan of these photos, and the lighting setup does add a lot, particularly in this photo, which is my favourite from the roll. Not a phone in sight either. I'm also a really big fan of this photo. I think the foreground has a really nice sense of motion to it, and the background looks really cool as well. Also featured on this roll was my first ever 140 event, which I got some really good pictures at. Me and my friends decided to head over to Copenhagen for a week, and I thought it'd be a perfect opportunity to take some pictures. So I brought my point and shoot camera, and the film I decided to bring was Cinestill 400D, a film I'd never shot before to a city I'd never been before. But I'm pretty happy with the results I got. Unfortunately, the Minolta started acting up quite a lot on this trip. It took about 20 minutes to focus for this one particular shot, and it's definitely not worth it. Also, it ended up in me taking quite a lot of accidental photos, like this one, and this one. But for this role, I was mostly focused on just getting nice holiday pictures, which I think I definitely succeeded at. and luckily, along on the trip with me, I brought a second roll. Whilst Kentmere isn't a film that I shoot a lot of nowadays, it definitely performed very well in Copenhagen. Since the Minolta Riva doesn't have the sharpest or highest quality glass in the world, it leads the images to have sort of a blurred, ethereal look in the black and white, particularly this one of Lucy looking at an art piece. I'm also a huge fan of this photo of the exterior of Bergen, which is probably one of my favourites from the trip. I do wish I was shooting colour film here, but the sign still looks cool in black and white. This photo of myself in the Acne changing rooms has quite a nice surreal quality to it, although the Lego bag might slightly break that illusion. Overall, I'm a really big fan of both of these rolls from Copenhagen, particularly the latter, and maybe I'll go again, perhaps around the roll 51 mark. Another practice roll for the Practica, to varying degrees of success. It kind of sucks to look back and look at how much film I've wasted, but I guess you don't get better if you don't practice. So, my first time shooting 100 speed film, and I'm pretty happy with the results. Since the weather was particularly nice, I ended up taking it to the pub quite a lot and also on a couple walks as well. This photo of a bathroom window is a particular favourite. I just love the contrast between the shadows and the highlights. I'm also a really big fan of these photos from a hike. Whilst the focus is off on some of them, you can see that the compositions are slowly but steadily improving, which was a good sign to see. Particularly, I'm a big fan of this photo, which is probably my favourite from the entire roll. Heading down to Bath with my friend Harry for a slow tide gig. I took this picture whilst we were waiting in the queue, which I'm a really big fan of. And there was also this, which I was definitely disappointed to miss focus on, because it could have been a cool picture, but what can you do? However, once we got inside and I started taking some pictures of the gig, I was really pleased with how they came out. I love how the Colour Plus rendered the skin tones, along with sort of the ambient lighting in the room. The focus was also spot on, which was pretty surprising. But my one gripe again was I wish I'd just been a little bit closer to avoid having people's heads in the frame. For the latter half of the roll, I was in Berlin with my course mates, and just like any time in a foreign country, I was shooting pretty much anything and everything. I love both of these photos of the metro. The empty one has such a nice green tone to it, and the tunnel seems to bend and stretch forever, with the lights and the pillars slowly disappearing off into the distance. And this photo of Will and Grace I'm also a really big fan of. I like the heavy flash in the foreground, and you have that same green tone in the background too, which just makes for a really nice image. And also it's just a nice picture of my friends on holiday. On that same trip to Berlin, I ended up shooting a second roll, which was another roll of Kentmere 400. This ended up being a great roll. I'm actually really happy with a lot of these photos on this roll. I don't know whether it's just because we were in a foreign country and everything just ends up looking a lot cooler, or if I was just a really big fan of the trip and I love the photos because of that. But like I say, I was just a really big fan of them. In particular, I love this photo of the inside of a cinema. I initially walked past this and had to turn around and take the picture slightly later on, but I managed to capture this couple leaving the cinema, which I think really adds to the image. Personally, I do love backlit images, and this for me is a personal favourite. Alongside that, this photo of Ralph, Will and Brett on the subway is definitely a standout. I love the symmetry with Will and Brett's poses at either side of the frame, with Ralph sort of sandwiched in the middle between them. There's also a perfect amount of motion blur here, which gives the image a nice sense of life. Luckily, we managed to take this just before nearly getting arrested on that same subway. At this point, I started to show a lot more progress in my photography. I started to put a lot more thought behind the images I was taking, and because of that, I was getting a lot happier with the images I was getting back. And this boosting confidence would help massively, as when I returned back from Berlin, I had the opportunity to shoot Old Boy and Silver Bumper at Plot 22. So how did my first event go? All things considered, I think it went pretty well. I ended up taking a new camera with me, we'll go into that later, and quite a few rolls of film just as I wasn't sure how much I would be shooting. Looking back, I do definitely feel like I overshot and shot way too many pictures, but I was a bit nervous and I wanted to definitely get a couple actually good usable photos. So I decided it's probably better to overshoot than undershoot in this instance. This is also where I shot Portra for the first time ever, and I've got to agree with pretty much everyone else on the planet. It is one of the best films. The colours came out great, and so did the skin tones too. Although I'm not as big a fan of this roll, there are a couple images here and there that I do like, but the majority of them I was pretty disappointed with. The new camera I was shooting with was the Ricoh RZ750, which is a point and shoot that has considerably more features than the point and shoot I was using at the time. Featuring a zoom lens, manual flash and multiple exposure modes, I definitely had more options at my disposal, but since it was only my second time using it, I was a bit overwhelmed and a bit out of my depth, so that wasn't the smartest decision. However, I was using the multiple exposure mode and it created these sort of blurry atmospheric photos, which I am a big fan of. Fortunately, I also bought my Minolta Riva with me at the time and had some Candido 200 loaded into that. Unfortunately, the Candido 200 was not the best choice in this instance. I do think that this super high contrast between the shadows and the light resulted in a lot of the skin tones just being way too bright and blown out. There are a couple of photos that I like from this roll, but to be honest, they're few and far between, and the majority of them were quite disappointing. And since Bad Things come in threes, we might as well complete it, as I wasn't happy with this roller cine still either. I think the combination of a high-speed film and also shooting flash led to the images just being super blown out and a bit too bright, which is a common theme for the rest of the roll. However, where the cine stills seem to shine is in these three pictures of the snow. All of which I'm a massive fan of, especially the last one with the traffic light covered in snow. People seem to really like that one. The last of the roll caught a couple portraits at my friend Lucy's birthday. Particular favourites are this one of Adam and Chili, and then also this one of just Adam by himself. It has quite a nice impromptu sort of paparazzi-esque feel to it, which I really enjoy. This roll I actually shot the day that I got the Ricoh to sort of test out and just see if the camera was working, but due to black and white developing times, I only just got it back now. There isn't really much to say about these rolls. I was kind of just testing out the features and seeing what works. I like these pictures in my room, but that's really about it. Having enjoyed the first time I shot Portra, I decided to load it again, and this time I loaded it at plot 22 and caught the last couple of stills of the evening on it. I think I used the multiple exposure mode on the RZ750 to get this image, and it sort of gives it that blur and haze, which I really like. For the rest of the roll, I took a series of portraits on a staff night out, which came out great. I think this is where Portra really shines. Obviously everyone uses it for studio portrait shoots, and that's what it works best for. It's really great at capturing skin tones, and just generally colours seem to come out great on it. After these 2 rolls, whilst not getting the most out of Portra that I should do, I can still attest to it being definitely one of the best film stocks ever. It was my friend's graduation day and I decided to take my camera with me to take some portraits of them, and given my history of using the Praktica, I definitely wasn't too hopeful, and I don't blame you guys for not being hopeful either, but they didn't come out too bad. I definitely could have exposed these better. A lot of the subjects seem to sort of fade away into the background as it's busier, so some separation would have been nice. But honestly, I was just happy to get a full roll out of the Praktica for once. And whilst not the best photos in the world, it was just nice to have a sign that I was slowly but surely improving. The RZ750 quickly turned out to be quite a formidable camera, as it was very quickly turning around some of my favourite images I've ever taken. From this roll in particular, I'm a really big fan of this self-portrait and also this photo of my brother playing the bass. I just love how it's caught the light reflecting on it. It's pictures like those that show how useful the RZ's optional flash is. It's not even like you have to change camera modes or anything. The flash will automatically pop up, but if you just simply hold it down, the camera knows you don't want to shoot with flash and adjusts its settings accordingly. I wish this was a feature present in a lot more point and shoots, as it just makes the whole shooting experience easier, and also you have that little bit extra bit of manual control, which can help you create more meaningful photos. I mostly just shot this roll around my house, so a lot of the photos aren't really anything crazy. However, there are 2 standouts from the roll. This photo of a runner came out great. I remember waiting about 10 minutes to get this perfect shot as I was waiting for the perfect amount of people to go by, and I'm really glad that the wait paid off. I'm a really big fan of just the harsh angular lighting and how there's only a singular subject in the photo and he's just about to leave the frame. Alongside that photo, the other good photo from the roll is this photo of a solidarity banger hanging over a bridge. I was pretty rushed when taking this and I shot it whilst walking, so I didn't have a lot of faith in it coming out, but it did come out great in the end, which I'm very thankful for. I think this stands as a testament to all of those prior photos that I've shot inside the house where I've had time to slowly develop my skills, because if I didn't put those hours in, I wouldn't have been able to quickly and hurriedly take something like this. So I guess the about 20 rolls of bad photos through the Praktica have now paid off. One thing I'm incredibly grateful for my friends letting me do is take pictures of them constantly. And this is what this roll ended up being, just a nice little portrait test shoot with my housemate Adam. At this point, I was getting pretty confident with using the Praktica, at least confident that I could get a roll of images back. And I wanted to sharpen my portrait skills, and since Adam was willing, we had a test shoot. Whilst these photos aren't the best, there are a couple that I did end up liking. More importantly, however, it made me realise that I really enjoy using natural light to light my photos, and this is something that I've kind of carried with me the entire time. I much prefer using the natural light that's around rather than using a flash or something else like that. I could also tell that my exposures were improving just that little bit more, and I was also getting confident with how to use different apertures to my advantage. Like I say, the majority of the roll wasn't anything too crazy, but these three are definitely my favourites. So I'm sure you're all wondering what 38.5 means, and it means something went drastically wrong. To this day, I still have no idea what actually happened with this roll, but I only got 4 photos out of this roll, and I'm going to use the term photos very loosely here, as I'll show you. So yeah, not exactly sure what went wrong here, but hence the 38.5. Moving swiftly on. For those keen-eyed viewers amongst you, you might have noticed we've just unlocked a new camera. At this point I was getting some pretty serious gas, and I decided it was time to treat myself to a new little point and shoot, that being the Canon SureShot Ace, one of my favourite cameras of all time. Compared to the RZ750, it is fairly stripped back in terms of features. It only has one shooting mode, but it does have a cool waist level viewfinder and also a built-in remote for timer pictures. So let's see how the camera held up. I'd say it held up pretty well. I took it out on a staff do and the pictures came out great from that. The lens is sharp and clear and finds focus pretty quickly, and the camera is equally good, if not better, in daylight. I was really happy to get these images back, pleased with how they came out. Again, there really isn't too much to say with this role in particular. However, you do get to see the one outstanding benefit of using the RZ750 is that you can take multiple exposure photos like this one. So each time I shoot Portra, it seems to get better and better than the last time, and with the third time, that was no exception. I took this picture of a carousel, which I really enjoy. I think the colours are spot on and the motion blur is just perfect to creating like a sort of really nice dreamlike ambience to the whole thing. As I was saving the Portra for a special event, I decided that year's 140 event was as good a time as any to load it up and take some pictures. And they ended up coming out great. I'm a massive fan of all of these photos and I think they're just such a step up from last year's pictures too. I'm a really big fan of all of the portraits of my friends, and the closer up ones of the DJs and MCs performing are great too. I think it was really nice to see the camera, the film and my skills all improve in that year time, and it was just a nice benchmark to see how far I'd come. I went from strength to strength for the next role, as I was really happy to get these back too. These were mostly pictures from an awards show, which I was really happy with, and just some quiet moments in between for that month. Since it was Christmas time and I was heading home, I decided to take the practical with me to have a little bit more time to practice and sort of get comfortable with it. After having those last couple of rolls come out pretty happy, I decided it would be a good experiment. I started off by taking a couple pictures around my house, and then once I got home I started shooting there too. Whilst by no means perfect images, it is really nice, as I keep saying, to see my skills improve, and it's just affirming to see better pictures coming out slowly but surely. I think my favourites of these rolls would be these two bracketed pictures of the shed next door. I think they just came out great, and they seem to work really well with the film grain. I guess it was time for another special opportunity, as my first ever experience working on the set was just around the corner, so I decided to load up some more Portra to shoot this time. On the day, I decided to meet up with my friend Harry and take a couple test portraits before heading down to the studio to shoot behind the scenes for Made by Atelier. Like I said, this was my first experience being on a set, and I was just really nervous and I wasn't really too sure what to expect, but everyone was really lovely, nice, and pretty comfortable getting their picture taken, so I just started taking loads of pictures. Unfortunately, a lot of these pictures ended up coming out blurry or just plain bad. Like I say, I wasn't really sure what to shoot, and when I get nervous, like at plot 22, I just tend to overshoot. However, I am a big fan of these two pictures from that roll. And luckily, I brought a couple extra rolls and my point and shoot with me to take some more pictures. So this is a roll that started my long-standing but pretty one-sided beef with Lomography film stocks. Apart from, of course, Potsdam. They can never make me hate you, Potsdam. I'm just personally not a fan of how this stock renders colours, and especially skin tones. They just all came out super white and super bright, which isn't a look I personally go for. The whole roll itself came out with this kind of cold blue tint to it, which is fine for pictures like this, where it sort of works with that photo, but not for most of them. Speaking of Potsdam 100, this was my first ever time shooting it, and it very quickly became a favourite of mine. Since it's a much slower speed film, it didn't come out with the perfectly exposed photos I was imagining. It sort of had this more subdued, darker tone to it, which I'm a massive fan of, especially in shots like these where it works well for these silhouette style photos. The film also came out really nicely when I was using a hot shoe flash, like in these images here. However, these three images are definitely standouts from this roll, and I still enjoy seeing them today. Here's the last couple photos from that day on set. The RZ was really useful to use as its zoom lens sort of cuts off any borders of the set, making it feel a lot more closed in and personal. Overall, I'm a massive fan of everything I shot that day and just my experience working on that set. Not to say the images were perfect, but I felt like it was a really important experience for me to learn and a really big milestone in my own photography journey. The rest of that role caught a trip down to London to see my friend Chile. These images are okay, but the standout is definitely this photo of a double exposure of Chile. Personally, I love doing double exposures. I think they come out so cool, and I'd love to do more, apart from the fact that Nathan broke my RZ750. So shout out to Nathan. And just when I was getting comfortable using the Praktica, and just when you guys were getting comfortable expecting results out of the Praktica, this happened. However, with this roll, I'm going to claim that it is not my fault. I don't even remember buying this roll of Colour Plus. It just sort of turned up in my film drawer and I shot it. But clearly it had been shot before, either a very long time ago or exposed in some way, which led to this. Not ideal, but these things happen. Following on from working with Made by Atelier, I had the opportunity to shoot behind the scenes for them yet again, this time at the fashion show. I took a couple warm-up pictures at the rehearsal and just some in and around the venue to sort of get me feeling comfortable and confident. And then when the show started, I headed up to the balcony and started shooting. Now, keen-eyed viewers amongst you might be able to tell that these photos are a little bit blurry. Unfortunately, just due to how far away I was and the speed of film I was using, I had to shoot way slower than was necessary, and it just led to all of the images basically being a complete blur. This was definitely disappointing, but to make the most out of a bad roll, I decided to chop all the photos together to form this little video loop, to at least get something out of a bad roll. "50 rolls in and I'm still making mistakes. Who would have guessed?" So, 50 rolls in and we're about halfway through, and honestly this video is a lot larger than I originally anticipated, so I think I'm going to split it into two different parts. That way it's a little bit more digestible for me to make and for you guys to watch, because I can imagine after 50 rolls of bad photos, it gets a bit tiring. We've come a long way from roll 1. It's been about 2 years, I think, from rolls 1 to 50. And whilst not technically good, we're definitely getting better. Around this point in my life, I still wasn't feeling the most confident with my photography, and I definitely wouldn't have referred to myself as a photographer. I just had cameras. But from roll 51 onwards, I think that begins to change. I started to experiment a lot more with buying new gear, taking new photographs, and I'm really happy and excited for you guys to see the growth from then onwards. If all goes well, this video will come out at the start of July, with the latter half to come out at the start of August. So if that's something you'd like to see, why not subscribe? I really hope you've enjoyed this sort of retrospective recap and are excited for part 2. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more of my photography, please consider subscribing. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below, and I'll see you soon.